It's Wellness Wednesday. It's Wellness Wednesday. And this Wednesday, I'm going to talk about the problems with pandering. Now, this is not in Manly Monday, even though with gaming, it tends to be, why aren't you pandering to men? But, romance novels pander to women in ways that are, toxic as well. So I'm really surprised when I hear anybody say they're upset that a game or a TV show or a movie isn't pandering to them anymore. Because when someone is pandering to you, they are manipulating you. They are not treating you as an equal. They are not treating you as respect. And this is where the kind of spiral of abuse that we get in kind of geek communities kind of collapses into this shit sandwich. And I want to unpack it so that, people can be a bit more conscious with their language, maybe look inside and go, maybe there's a way of engaging with this stuff that's better for me, and maybe some of my own assumptions, maybe the abuse I've suffered in the real world is affecting the way I see this stuff. This is not intended to attack anybody. It's intended to just provide information and give another perspective. Help support this channel if you like this content, because I don't think the YouTube algorithm does. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Patreon is essential. I know people like the coffee, and the one-time Leanna Cares session for someone can use but can't afford at coffee.com is great. Both are awesome. And if you want to sign up for Leanna Cares sessions and you can't afford it, link in the description box below. Fill it out. We'll get in touch. So, pandering. The description of pandering. Gratify or indulge. This is from Oxford Languages. Gratify or indulge an immoral or distasteful desire, need, or habit, or a person with such a desire, etc. The example in a sentence is newspapers are pandering to people's baser instinct. Cambridge Dictionary. Pander to someone something. Definition: to please other people by doing or saying what you think they want you to do or say. You notice that neither of these things are authentic or treating someone like a respected equal. They're manipulations. They're saying what you think you're supposed to, saying what you think the person wants to get something you want. This is not a trusting, supportive relationship. And my fear is that people have so given up on being accepted and cared about for who and what they are that they're saying, I want to be pandered to because that's all they think they can get. Also, there seems to be this belief that if you are not actively pandered to, a piece of media hates you. And this is something that's going to be really, really tough to shake because, I know I've described certain games, The Last of Us 2, as feeling like never have I felt so abused by a game as The Last of Us 2. Even Baldur's Gate 3 that left me feeling very, very beat up. Even that game wasn't the bludgeoning that The Last of Us 2 was. And I mean, some people play these games and go, this game understands me. Yikes. But, that's a discussion for another day. Most media, especially like media for a mass audience, the people involved may talk a good game about, oh yeah, we were woke, or we were, doing this and that and everything. But the money people won't let them do that. They want to target two demographics, an often, I mean, the problem is demographics are often defined based on race, age, gender, etc., right? Not interest. And, one of the things that the Fallout show on Amazon Prime did was cast a very, very wide net demographically, right? They clearly had, Lucy's women. No single woman can fully embody every woman. And that's the problem with having the token female character. Not that there was a token female character in Fallout, but Lucy was sort of the main character. And then you had Maximus, who, I called him Fallout Finn for a really long time because at first he did really seem like he was just there to be the black guy in a POV character. But, that's the formula. And then there was Cooper, the ghoul, for everyone who knows what's freaking good, who understands the miracle that is Walton Goggins. And that's the thing. When you offer enough variety, everybody can kind of pick what they like. And it doesn't have to look like you. The problem is that sometimes it's really nice to have a character look like you in a way that isn't involved in a way that isn't mockery. I've been hearing a lot of people say, yes, well, I would prefer people like me aren't represented in media because they tend to be the butt of jokes or humiliated for a punchline. And, I really connected to that because, yeah, I have this run-on thing of, okay, a redhead's here. Is she going to be brutally violent or a raging slut? And when it hits one or the other, I'm just like, maligned again. And it is, I mean, ginger guys get it. Like, I've been joking a lot about, the first two A Court of Thorn and Roses books, A Court of Thorn and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury. The ginger dude is seemingly the only man in the vicinity that the main character does not want to have a pony ride on in some way. Just objectively the best character, but Farrah has no taste. But I do see this, the fact that the villain is an older redheaded woman who is just evil. There's no nuance, just evil, right? And then the ginger dude is the least sexy of the fairy guy. Like, this stuff lands, right? And do I think it's intentional? No. I'm talking about this so that I understand where the sensitivities come from. And the thing about writers is, writers spend a lot of time sitting at a keyboard. That is not at the gym. The deadlines are very tight. Your gym routine goes to shit fairly frequently. So you don't look like the hunky barbarian guy, and so a lot of the time they put their self-inserts in as kind of a comic relief. Oh, they're too, but they don't want to be egotistical. Nobody will believe. The self-loathing starts coming into it. And I do think that that's what I notice about novels aimed at women is that the only real description of Bella in Twilight or Feyre in A Court of Thorn and Roses is that she has brown hair. And they go through how much weight Feyre gains or loses, almost Bridget Jones style. But you really don't get a lot of description, detail about what she looks like. And, this is partially because brown is the most common hair color. Hey, you can imagine yourself there. No, you can't. Um, and I do think that there is a difference in, if you look at the way boys are sort of, when it used to be free play, when it used to be like real life play based, not in apps, it was be a policeman, be a firefighter, be, oh, the Transformers were robots. It was never be Barbie. Girl toys tend to have this like first person narrative thing, Barbie, Jasmine, Belle, Ariel, because what are we gonna have? Be teacher? I mean, there used to be the chef sets, and I always thought those things that because we couldn't afford that. Those are still freaking expensive. But whenever I'd go somewhere, and I mean, okay, I was born in the late 70s, so there would always be a boy playing with me, and that was not weird. It didn't become so segregated for safety like it is now. And there wasn't the same roles. And so what you ended up doing is having a lot of social comparisons to Barbie or whatever, Bratz dolls or whatever. I like Gem and the Holograms because they had weird colored hair. For some odd reason, characters with blue hair and or fur, I always liked in media, but I guess I sort of connected it. They have a weird hair color and I have a weird hair color. They're the closest thing to like me that, because I mean, Anne of Green Gables and all that stuff, I never related to the girl who some boy was following around, madly in love with her, took whatever shit she dished out. I never saw myself in that. And I guess that was considered aspirational, but it just made me tune out. And so I prefer characters who are defined, because then I can take that defined character and look at how they interplay and interlock with the other characters in media and go, yeah, so you sort of kind of go, that's in character, that's not in character. The way I was like so thrilled in Yakuza Kiwami 1, I think it was, when big dramatic moment where Majima allegedly takes a woman hostage and he's holding a knife to her throat. And I'm like, he wouldn't do that. He identifies as a woman. He'd never endanger a woman. And then I noticed that the knife was backward. The flat end of the blade was against her throat. It was all a big, misdirect, as Majima does. Those are cool moments. I would prefer a super clearly defined character, but I am not the norm. And this idea that we soothe with impossibly attractive people instead of validating ourselves by embracing stories with people who look, look the part they're supposed to play. They make sense, but they're not impossible. Like, as much as I enjoy, Nier Automata and parts of Stellar Blade, I'm a little sick of male gaze android girl designed to make a point. It's just, how many times are we gonna do that shtick? And I know there are people who love that. I'm just telling you that when you are retreating all the time away from actual people, that avoidance becomes a habit. The more you actively avoid stressful stimulus, the more it seems scary because your brain forms associations, but there's a girl, trigger avoidance protocols. And I know a lot of guys are avoiding women because of Me Too. And I know a lot of women are avoiding men because of Me Too, hence the bear. And I'm somebody who would rather tell my emotions to a tree than a woman, so I get it. But we do have to step into that anxiety somewhat and deal with people who are different from us, deal with people who may think different things like us, not because it's some great humanitarian thing, but because it's actually good for our brains, right? Getting more comfortable with uncertainty, getting used to feeling that little bit of unease, that little bit of awkwardness without it triggering full-blown anxiety, building what we call distress tolerance. That's good for us because the more we do it, the less a single bad encounter, bad experience matters. Because it's one data point of 100 as opposed to one data point of 4, right? Our brains need human-to-human contact. And when you're just retreating into these fantasy worlds of impossibly it's amazing to me how little personality these perfect people have, because of course if they're nothing they can't put somebody off. And it's funny because I find that in video games, the Eve, for example, she's deliberately innocent, and I understand the plot point there, but there's not much to her personality-wise. She's a cipher, In these romance novels, I'm actually stunned at how little the romantic lead male talks. It's this big burly brute who knows absolutely what to do with various body parts, which is another thing that doesn't happen in real life. I would love there to be more communication in sex in media, because that is how you get good sex in real life. If you just lie there and expect the other person to know what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing. It's going to be a less good experience than if you communicate. And it feels awkward to communicate at first because we don't see it in the perfected media stuff. Often when people are talking, it's played for laughs, or it's designed to sort of disgust us, or, something negative. But that's how it's good. The other thing is that if someone is so-called perfect, first of all, no such thing. There's no such thing as a perfect looking person. There's no such thing as a perfect behaving person, because these things are objective. Somebody has to have a particular color hair, right? I always remember when they changed Yvonne Strahovski's hair for Yvonne Strahovski's blonde. But when they made her Miranda in Mass Effect, they changed her hair to a very dark brown. And they said, oh, it just looked better. Strangely, Ashley, the other brown-haired girl, and Jack, even though she's, kind of bald, dark stubble, right? Somebody there clearly had a type to think brown to black hair just looked better on women. Now, it may have been the lighting tech, except, when they finally ran the contest, Shepard ended up a ginger, right? Everybody's got their preferences. What is perfect for one person is not perfect for somebody, because there's no such thing as perfect. And let's face it, there's a total package thing going on with a lot of people that we find attractive as humans. Voice has a lot to do with whether someone's attractive. Confidence does, whether they're funny, whether they're compassionate. All these things matter a lot more than the way a person looks. But what do we focus on? The way a person looks in media. And this creates a feedback loop with ourselves that tells us, oh, we don't look like the ideal, therefore no one will ever love us, and we're discouraged from trying. It pushes us down into that stay in the cave brain depression. And so we don't take risks. We don't venture out. We don't meet people because our brains are designed to keep us safe, not help us thrive. And I do really think that even though the gender dynamics in those old school sitcoms were, of the much more attractive wife than the husband, at least there were more real people. Like there were regular guys and more regular women. Now we're seeing some plus size women on, medical procedurals and stuff like that. And I find that instead of it being kind of normal guy and normal woman, it's just the opposite problem. Pretty by real world standards woman with, what's allegedly super hot actor guy, instead of two people who look like you might see them as a couple in the real world. And this isn't good for the parts of our brains that are constantly searching for comparisons. We have parts of our brain that are obsessed with how we're doing, how we fit into the world, where we rate on the social hierarchy, to the point that the person with the biggest house on a poor street communicates greater happiness than the person with the smallest or, least valuable house on a very rich street, even though quality of life in that neighborhood is obviously better because of social comparisons. And if we are constantly consuming media where all these impossibly beautiful, people, because it's never impossibly brilliant, impossibly nice. It's always impossibly physically attractive, right? And that's not saying there isn't a place for extremely attractive people. Can it just not be everyone? And can people actually make sense based on the characters they play? Like, please, if you're gonna put a wizard in your fantasy game and he spends all time reading books and doing spells and researching, do not give him like swimmer pecs and 6-pack abs. It takes me out of it. Please, give him a little bit of something in the midsection. Because I don't need or expect book guy to have 3% body fat. We need to start showing that people who look like people have value for the value that they bring. Because I work with so many people who feel like burdens, who feel worthless, who feel inferior, who are terrified, not so much of violence. That's the thing that people don't realize about both points of view. When guys talk about being afraid of women, it's not just a false accusation, it's rejection. And when women talk about being afraid of men, it's the demeaning elements of life. And one of the things that really gets lost when there's female media for women that's trying to be relatable to women, that has this parade of shitty guys, the whole bad date shtick, like in She-Hulk. The intent there is not to say all men are like this. The intent there is to create a relatable thing where that one who puts you down and, nails at that insecurity just because they're so common in women that they're easy to pick on, and leaves you feeling really shitty. That guy lingers with you, right? The nice guys, because whenever you see that in women's media, they're clearly leading up to her meeting a great guy, right? And it's like men don't know how to read the cues. And this is the problem with having a certain type of media pander to a particular group. The romance novel women's media pandering is so thick that we don't see the toxic messaging in these stories unless someone like me comes in who's like, what is going on here? This is scaring me. I get that I'm not normal. I get that I don't know how these things work, but what? And then with, the superhero comic book stuff that, for quite a few years, comics didn't start this way, but for quite a few years, comics did very heavily pander to a particular type of guy, not because they loved that type of guy. It's just because they wanted that type of guy to buy 4 issues of the same comic for the different covers, right? The spec market was followed by really, really heavy pandering because buy, right? That wasn't a respect for the customer. That wasn't a respect for the reader. That was, we want to suck as many pennies out of you as we possibly can. That's not good, because I think on some level, we know we're being pandered to. The reason I will defend the ending of Dragon Age Origins, as cliche as elements of it are, is that it did put a big old block on the perfect date the adorkable, Arthurian prince romance option. Cause, oh my God, Alistair is catnip. He's so cute. And, there's a thing where he's a virgin. He's socially awkward. He's not super smart, but he's so nice. And he means so well. And he just wants to do good and wants to be a part of something. And he just wants belonging, and so cute. But then, have him, you have a choice. He can, if you're playing, well, you have to be a woman in Dragon Age Origin to sleep with Alistair. He's straight. But okay, right at the end, spoiler, have him sleep with the scantily clad, better looking, voiced by Claudia Black witch, or he dies. That's a tough choice. And it's cliche. It's something, that kind of binary choice doesn't tend to happen in the real world, but it kind of stops that very pandery, adorkable boy You can have all the things fantasy in its tracks and forces you to make a tough choice. That's good game writing, right? That's what I want to see more of. I want to see challenging material that ultimately affirms, because this is better for us. The purpose of, mental health interventions, the purpose of great friends, the purpose of good therapy is challenging assumptions, challenging the scripts, the assumptions we make in our heads about the world, about life. And, that question basically comes down to, for women, is your ego and insecurities worth his life? And it's, when it's put that way, it's like, no, that's stupid, but it still stings. It still stings, because there's a button when, he's, even imagining a man you care about sleeping with a, sexier woman hits every insecurity button in you. Even though he doesn't even really like her, it's creepy. They probably wouldn't make it today because consent is a much bigger deal than when Dragon Age Origins came out. But I don't mind problematic content in games because it forces a moral choice. It's a trolley problem. And I think all the pandering in media, all the things, all the fan service, all the fan canon, all the fan fiction, people spending far too long being able to get exactly what they want with no challenge, has made us kind of emotionally and intellectually mushy. It hasn't made us feel more validated. We're seeing a lot more anxiety because, like I said, it just boomerangs around and reminds you of all the ways you're not like these perfect people in perfect scenarios. So I do think that there is a place. The reason The Witcher's so compelling is those are not perfect people. Geralt's all covered in scars and has lice in his beard and, all this. I wish they'd kept Triss's scarring in those games. That's a big disappointment for me. But you see, there's an example of how I think if they hadn't pandered to the male gaze, the Hollywood gaze, as I call it, it would have been better. But they wanted to sell games and they were an indie company and they threw everything at the wall for a target demographic. And, it may have worked from a marketing perspective, but I think that the thing that makes Triss cool is she's kind of a sorceress nerd who's allergic to the glamours. They took that out of her. And I'd like to see more of that in games. Cassandra reading Varric's trashy novels and Dragon Age 2. And, that was Inquisition. Stuff like that. Those little character moments that feel more real because it's part of a more wholly developed character instead of just make Dream Girl. Creates ultimately more satisfying media and a better long-term impact on the people who play them, because we're not setting our comparisons with impossible standards. We're setting our comparisons with fully developed characters with strengths and weaknesses. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K, or sign up for a Leanna Care session yourself. Thanks for watching and be well.